In this video, we'll take a look at how to enter questionnaire or survey data into SPSS. And this is something that a lot of people have questions with. So it's important to make sure when you're working with SPSS, in particular, when you're entering data from a survey, that you know how to do. So let's go ahead and take a few moments to look at that. And here you see on the right-hand side of your screen, I have a questionnaire, a very short sample questionnaire that I want to enter into SPSS. So we're going to create a data file. And in this questionnaire here, I've made a few modifications. I've underlined some variable names here, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. And I also put numbers in parentheses to the right of these different names. And I'll also explain that as well. Now, normally when someone sees this survey, we wouldn't have gender underlined, for example, nor would we have these numbers to the right of male and female. So that's just for us to help better understand how to enter these data. So let's go ahead and get started here. In SPSS, the first thing we need to do is, every time we have a possible answer, such as male or female, we need to create a variable in SPSS that will hold those different answers. So our first variable needs to be gender, and that's why that's underlined there, just to assist us as we're doing this. So we want to make sure we're in the Variable View tab, and then in the first row here under Name, we want to type gender, and then press Enter, and that creates the variable gender. Now notice here I have two options, male and female. So when people respond or circle or check here that they're male, I need to enter into SPSS some number to indicate that. So we always want to enter numbers whenever possible in SPSS because SPSS, for the vast majority of analyses, performs statistical analyses on numbers, not on words. So I wouldn't want to enter male, female, and so forth. I want to enter ones, twos, and so on. So notice here, I just arbitrarily decided males get a 1 and females get a 2. It could have been the other way around, but since male was the first name listed, I went ahead and gave that a 1, and then for females I gave it 2. So what we want to do in our data file here is go ahead and go to Values, this column, click on the None cell. Notice these 3 dots appear. They're called an ellipsis. Click on that. And then our first value, notice here, 1 is male. So value of 1, and then type label male, and then click Add. And then our second value of 2 is for females. So go ahead and enter 2 for value, and then female, click Add, and then we're done with that. You want to see both of them down here, and that looks good, so click OK. Now those labels are in here, and I'll show you how that works when we enter some numbers in a minute. Okay, next we have ethnicity, so I'm going to call this variable ethnicity. So go ahead and type that in, press Enter, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to create value labels here. So 1 is African American, 2 is Asian American, and so on. And I'll just do that very quickly. So going to Values column, click on the ellipsis. For 1, we have African American. For 2, Asian American. 3 is Caucasian. And just so you can see that here, 3 is Caucasian, 4 is Hispanic, and other is 5. So let's go ahead and finish that. 4 is Hispanic. 5 is other. So let's go ahead and do that. 5 is other. Okay, and that's it for that variable. Now we do have, it says please state. I'll talk about that next. That's important. When they can enter text, we have to handle that differently. But for now, we have our 5 possible options coded in here. So that's perfect. So click OK. Now next, say someone checks this box here, other. They get a 5 for ethnicity. But then they state something like biracial. So whenever we have a box or an entry that people can type something in, that needs its own variable. So here in row 3, we're going to enter other ethnicity. Okay, and then we don't want it to be numeric. That means it's going to be a number. And it's not. It's going to be text here. So go ahead and click on numeric. Click on the 3 dots, and then select string. And string indicates that you can have text. And then let's change our characters to 25. That will allow 25 spaces, and then we're done there. So string is entered. Okay, our next is age. And then notice for age, they're going to enter their age, and we ask for it in years. So they'll enter 22, 43, or what have you. So we don't actually have to make codes like 1 for male, 2 for female, and so on. That value is going to be entered directly. So here, all we have to do is create the variable age, and then press Enter. And then next, we have 5 questions from what's called the Satisfaction with Life scale. And here people read the statements and says that below are 5 statements you may agree or disagree with using a 1 to 7 scale where SD is strongly disagree and SA is strongly agree. Answer each of the following as they apply to yourself. So the first statement on the scale is, in most ways, my life is close to my ideal. And then a person will circle one of these values, indicating whether they tend to agree with the statement or tend to disagree with it. If someone very much agreed with the statement, then they'd circle 7, saying they strongly agreed. If they agreed somewhat, they'd probably circle 5 or maybe 6, and so on. Now notice we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions on the scale. And this is a real scale by Diener, Satisfaction with Life scale. It's a very popular scale. And what I'm going to do in SPSS is, notice a person will answer one of these 7 choices here. They'll give one of these answers. They'll circle a 4 or 6 or what have you. So anytime someone answers a value, it needs to have a variable. So I need to create a variable in SPSS for this question or statement, a variable for this statement, and so on. And I'm going to call it the Satisfaction with Life scale, or SWLS for short, 1 for the first question on it. This will be SWLS 2, and so on. So let's go ahead and create those. So I have SWLS 1, and I'll just press enter. SWLS 2, these don't have to be in caps, but I'm just doing that. SWLS 4, and then SWLS 5. Now, we could go ahead for our own notes and code what these values mean if we want to. 1 is strongly disagree, 7 is strongly agree, and so on. And I'll go ahead and do that. I'll just code the extremes. So here a value of 1 is strongly agree. Let's make sure that's right. Nope, a value of 1 is strongly disagree. So it's important to double check that to make sure we get it right. And then a value of 7 is strongly agree, as is shown here. So let's make sure that checks out. 1 is strongly disagree. 7 is strongly agree. So that looks good. Click OK. And then something that's nice here, I can just copy this and then select these and select paste, and it will paste all of those value labels to the remaining questions. So that saves us a lot of time. And that's only something we want to do when the variables share the same structure. So in other words, SWLS has 1 is strongly disagree, 7 is strongly agree. Well, so does the rest of these, so we can go ahead and copy those. Okay, so that looks good. We can go to the Data View tab now, and here are our variables. Gender, ethnicity, the other ethnicity, that once again is if someone has an answer like biracial, age, and then the 5 items on the Satisfaction with Life scale.